Hello, and today I'm going to interview Franco Di Mori, who is the Soul Leadership Coach. We're going to find out exactly what that means, what type of business he runs, and what kind of people and entrepreneurs he helps and supports to make money and give service to humanity in a way that is soul-led. Hello, Franco.
Hey Jade, it's lovely to be here, and
How
I really appreciate you asking me on to hear my story. That's lovely.
Yeah, tell us a bit about your backstory then. What led to be a soul leadership coach? It's a very interesting name.
Wow. Well, we've only got an hour, and as you know, I do
Yeah.
like to talk. So let me let me keep this as succinct as possible. Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, I'm always of the belief that the most amazing things come to you, and it's fundamentally what I help people with in business and in life in general, to be honest with you. But the soul leadership coach thing just suddenly came to me one day. I wasn't really thinking about it, but somebody had said to me, one of my business mentors from about a year and a half ago had said, you need to have like a snazzy title, something that's like authentic, not contrived, but authentic. But makes people go, oh, what's that? And it just came to me, the soul leadership coach was like, oh, that's brilliant. And I just started using it and it's worked really, really well because that old marketing adage goes, you want people to either turn the volume right up or change channels and go somewhere else. And I tend to find that that's what it does, because it's absolutely aligned with who I am and what I do and how I help people. And for the people who are curious, they sort of lean in and go, "Oh, what's that all about?" But where that originally comes from, Jade, I mean, it's probably best if I start from the beginning, I guess. And again, I will be mindful of keeping this concise. Um, so I was born in Seychelles far too many years ago than I would care to admit, in 1972. And then from the age of 5, moved to the UK. And I always wanted to be an airline pilot. I think it was mainly because I've just been always been fascinated by flying. And where I grew up in the Seychelles for the first 5 years of my life, we were underneath one of the flight paths. And as a little toddler and a little kid, I was just mesmerized looking up at all these huge planes going past. And I was like, I want to do that. I got some bad careers advice when I was about 14, and I was like, dream shattered. What am I going to do? And I thought, oh, I know, I'll go and be a millionaire and just make loads of money. That's the next best thing, or at least that's what life seemed like at the age of 14. So then went through university, did something completely unrelated. I got a degree in building surveying of all things, did nothing with it. I don't even know why I did it. Well, I do actually, but that's another story. And then fast forward into my actual professional career, I got a job at a startup, a tech startup, in the late 90s. And I went for an interview, wasn't going to get the job, and then sort of basically hung onto the guy's leg and was like, just give me the goddamn job and I'll prove you right. And then went through this fast paced, fast track acceleration of um, corporate IT sales because I'd always sort of naturally been good at connecting with people. But I was in a very sort of hard faced, ruthless, pretty aggressive environment, but it was one hell of a learning curve. And I then went on to be a team leader, sales manager, and eventually went on to start a couple of other businesses, one of which was an IT company. Um, and then sort of fast forward through that, we sort of had these huge ups and downs, my business partner and I at the time. And then I left that because, um, excuse me, like my business partner and I at the time couldn't see eye to eye. It was amicable, but we couldn't see eye to eye about where the business was going. And we were starting, it's a shame because we started to make some great money, but I kind of never, never fully realized at the time that actually there was something really, really missing from it. But I'd had a big clue into what it was that I wanted to do. So after that, a few years later, I started a property trading business. Same reason that sort of fell apart. And then I had this huge meltdown. And whilst feeling sorry for myself and playing the violin, I had this huge epiphany. And I realized that actually, why don't I? Someone said to me, "You're really great at helping people. Why don't you get paid for it?" And I'd always, when I left my IT company, I'd had this epiphany to be a life coach. It was like this real calling that sort of came from here. But I immediately overwrote it. Well, who's going to listen to you? You're not good enough. You don't have the blah, 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 all the noise that we listen to. But the second time round, I actually listened to it and I looked back on my life and I realized that I'd actually been doing it all my life, helping people to feel better, be better, and solve their problems. Right from the earliest age, I was sort of had a very interesting relationship with my mum. We were very close, but we used to fight like cat and dog at the same time. But she used to come to me for advice as a really small kid and sort of all through growing up. I always found that really strange, but it was kind of lovely at the same time. And the same happened through school. And then as I was going through my corporate career and then my own business, I realized that the one thing that I loved more than the money was great, but the one thing that I loved more than anything was recruiting someone where you could see their raw talent and their capacity for greatness. And especially when I had my own company, I mean, I was a good salesperson, but I wanted the people who came into our business to be like way better than I was. And so I realized that it was helping people to sort of peel back the layers and let their magic shine that really, really, really helped me to come alive. And then in recent years, I've sort of had a huge spiritual awakening and a huge self-connection and self-mastery journey. And I've realized that everything that we do is led by self-connection, our inner world, self-mastery, self-enlightenment. And I use the word soul, which technically actually isn't true, but everybody knows that word. Everybody connects with it. Everybody gets it. And so the soul leadership coaches come around because everything that we do in life starts with the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. It starts with our connection to self. It starts with our perception of the world. It starts with the programming that we've had that we don't even realize we're running, and so on and so on. And my job, particularly with what I do now, is to help brilliant entrepreneurs, coaches, and senior leaders who are super ambitious, successful, but also very spiritually curious, who want to create much more impact in the world and create an amazing life as a result of that, but they feel hampered, and sometimes not even just hampered, but actually truly stuck with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, not feeling good enough, feeling completely misaligned, pretending to be someone that they don't really truly feel as though they are, doubting themselves from a leadership capacity, getting paranoid about competing, and so on and so on and so on. And stripping back those layers to help them realize that actually in here you have everything that you need to create a life that seems, and a business that seems impossible to other people. So that is how the soul leadership coach thing came about.
Yeah, I like what you said about self-connection. That's so important, isn't it? Yeah, that self-connection which enables you to either move forward or not, to have resistance, have fear, or remove that and be connected to your inner knowing and what you want to do, which I think that part of spirituality is fundamental in business. Because if you don't have that, how do you move forward really? That is the source of success, isn't it? It's a self-connection and inner knowing, intention, focus. And if you don't tap into that, I'm not sure how successful one can be, because at a certain point, you'll hit the resistance and you'll hit the fear. So that's really important. Yeah, really, really important. And do you help your clients get that self-connection, or is it that you use the self-connection that they already have with their business? Or, I mean, how do you work? Are you a spiritual coach or a business coach, or are you bringing self-connection into business?
The answer is yes.
Right.
to all of those things, because
Yeah.
effectively, Jade, they're all one and the same thing. Because
Yes.
um, you may have heard me say this before, but what I'm seeing as I do this work more, as I see the incredible transformations in business, as I see entrepreneurs, coaches, and senior leaders I work with, but particularly entrepreneurs and coaches who run their own businesses and their own teams, is they have one little shift in their self-connection, and all of a sudden their vision just goes like that. And
Yeah.
then they see these incredible opportunities that were always there, but because of their limited perspective, because of all the programming that they've got running and their limited capacity for a worldview. So it's like being stuck at the basement of a 50-story building, and then the self-connection takes you up somewhere near to the 50th floor where you can see for miles and miles and miles, and you look down and go, oh. And that in and of itself has brought in the most incredible new opportunities, money, connection, efficiency, and so on. Because everything is spiritual. And this is something I keep saying again and again and again and again, because I want the whole world, and especially the world of business, to really understand this, is that money is spiritual, clients are spiritual, cash flow is spiritual, the so-called competition is spiritual. And
Yeah.
in my sort of slightly facetious response to your question earlier about, do I give people something, or do I help them to reconnect with something, or is it something that's already inherent or whatever? Everything that we see in the world, every sort of physicality, is basically the final stage in an energetic stepladder that winds its way down into the material world, which might sound quite deep for some people. But what I mean by that is, a great example is, I always use this in some of my trainings, is like, imagine for a moment that you decide that you want to make a Thai curry. It's not there in front of you, but you have the vision to see that, and then you go and you break that down and automatically do the things that need to happen to then bring that into being. And it's a lovely metaphor, because it works in exactly the same way, in terms of when we connect with the power of who we truly are, which is love and wisdom, basically. And from that love and wisdom flows our individual and unique talents and abilities. Then when we connect with that, then literally everything is possible. I mean, great example, Jade. I just launched this free mini series recently. It's a 4-part video series, just like each video is like 5-6 minutes, totally free. And it's 3 powerful ways to annihilate imposter syndrome, connect with immeasurable self-worth, and feel amazing. Because one of the key things in business is, it's been noticed, it's being acknowledged more and more, is bringing about accelerated emotional benefits, and easing pain and internal suffering actually has a net positive effect on cash flow and revenue. And I shared this free mini series with a wonderful client of mine who wasn't actually particularly looking for more business. She was just really, she's an entrepreneur. She's got two or three great businesses, and has just become part of a much bigger collective with some incredible things they're going to do in the world. And she was feeling just a bit overwhelmed and just wanted to get centered again. And the day after the second video, because of the clarity and the self-connection and that inner connection with her own love and wisdom that she connected with, she created 2 incredibly high-ticket clients and found a 5-figure sum of money that she didn't even realize that she had. And she attributed that directly to that self-connection. She said, had it not been for your videos showing me how to reconnect with myself, that never would have happened. And that's what I mean when I say everything is interconnected. And that's just one example of so many incredible success stories.
Well, I mean, the whole law of attraction, and people wanting to make money, that's all spirituality, isn't it? Because everything,
Yeah.
your entire reality is spiritual anyway. It's all based on your belief systems. So you know, if you want to make money and attract money, then you better get spiritual. You gotta know where to place your intention. So yeah, very,
Mm.
very important in
And
business.
that's a really, really good point, Jade, because there are many examples out there of millionaires, multimillionaires, even billionaires, excuse me, who've made an incredible amount of money by not being connected to their inner world, to their inner wisdom, to their own spirituality. A-list celebrities are another example. But let's sort of stick with the business example, where they've used their intellect and their drive and their determination, and they've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed for years, decades, and become multimillionaires. But yet they are the most unhappy, suicidal, depressed people you could ever come across. They've literally got everything materially, but because they've got so off balance by just using the intellect and being so focused on materialism. And there's nothing wrong with materialism at all. There's nothing wrong or right with it. It just is. But they've become so disconnected from the core essence of who and what they truly are that they're suicidal. And there are countless examples of this. I mean, we see A-list celebrities all the time attempted suicide, or you find out later in interviews just how unhappy they are because they've completely gone off center and ignored that absolutely essential element of who and what we are, which is that connection to love, which is what we are.
And on the contrary, do you know, have you heard of Dr. J. Martini?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, on the contrary, I mean, you know, you've got someone who's immensely spiritual, who's built his entire world around his spiritual beliefs from such a young age, from coming from nothing with nothing.
yeah,
And what a world he's created.
yeah, incredible.
All
I mean,
based
he's
on spirit. Yeah.
worth hundreds of millions, and
Yeah.
yet and yet and as you say, you know, he's just one of the most beautiful beings you could ever come across. His energy, his spirituality, his connection to self, and connection to sort of unseen energies.
It's like
He's really
incredible.
really out there.
And then there's Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah,
Also, you know, I mean, you know, you just keep making more and more. I think spirituality doesn't fail you. It's the
yeah.
one
Well,
component of success in business. You've got to
it's
have it.
essential.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
essential. I mean, when I started my corporate career as a super hungry young guy wanting to prove myself and wanting to prove everybody wrong, that, you know, because so many people in my life say you never amount to anything, you won't do anything, you're just dreaming. If you want to be rich, you'll never do it, blah blah blah. And like, I'm going to prove
What a
everyone
load of
wrong.
nonsense that is.
Yeah, yeah. And this is from like family as well, close family members, because I look back on that time, and at
Mm,
the when I was in that, I was just, what's wrong with these people? Why are they so against me? But with the benefit of hindsight now, what I can see is, excuse me, is that they were just living out their own programs, their
right.
subconscious
Yeah.
programming,
Yeah.
and there was nothing bad about them. They were doing what they thought was best, because of course everything, when we judge someone, effectively what we're doing is reflecting a mirror back to ourselves of what our own fears and insecurities are. But yeah, when I started my corporate career in the late 90s, there very much was a, this is your corporate self, this is your personal self. These two don't mix like oil and water. So you had to. It's cringeworthy. I mean, my fellow contemporaries at the time and I, we used to like play games, like it's very well known in the sort of corporate business world of boardroom bingo, where basically you'd sat like in a really high level meeting, and you know, like when you're playing bingo, you cross off the numbers and you get a line, or you get a full card of numbers
Yeah.
and you shout house or whatever. And we used to do the same with expressions, like the 30,000 foot view. How are we going to something or other these assets, and just all these really ridiculous expressions? It said, just speak English and be yourself. I was
Yeah.
always told when I started in
Yeah.
sales, you're too nice. You're too nice to be in
Mm,
sales. I'm like, this is just me. But conversely, I was always told by clients and potential clients, one of the reasons that we do business with About You is because you're not like most
We like you.
salespeople. Is because yeah, yeah,
People do
is because
business with people
you're
they like.
actually a personable yeah, you're actually a personable guy. But yeah, back in the day, 25 years ago, there really was this very left-brained intellectual push, push, push. And as we mentioned earlier, you can be very successful with that, but it comes with a massive, massive, massive internal cost in terms of your
It does.
emotional,
Yeah.
mental health and well-being.
Mm.
Thankfully, though, Jade, as you and I have discussed in the past, and as I've shared on in other conversations, thank goodness the zeitgeist has changed. The mood has massively changed in this 2.5 decades. And I think people, for example, I know The Secret gets a bad rap, and I can understand why, but a lot of people say, oh, yeah, you just sit there and imagine and things come to you. Well, actually, when you watch The Secret, they don't say that. What they say is that's only half of the equation. You've got to take inspired action. But I think one great thing The Secret really did when that sort of exploded in 2008 onwards was that it made people realize, especially people in business, that actually there's much more to things than just pushing from an intellectual perspective to succeed. And then fast forward into recent years, you have people like Stephen Bartlett, who, with his Diary of a CEO, I think has done a terrific job of changing the landscape because he's such an aspirational figure to so many entrepreneurs out there that because he talks about mindfulness. I mean, he had somebody on, was it the other day, talking about the menopause. And I just thought, wow, isn't that wonderful that he's having these kind of conversations? Because, as you know, I've just started my own podcast, and my very, very first interview was with a great mutual friend of ours talking about her experience of taking the contraceptive pill. And you might think, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, it's got everything to do with everything. It's got everything to do with what she thought about herself, how she felt about herself, how
Mm.
it affected her physically, emotionally, what impact that had on her relationships, what impact that had on her capacity for how she was going to build her life. So what seems like an isolated subject, everything is interconnected. And again, because of people like Steve Bartlett, and he's not the only one, but in the UK especially, most people know him. I think he's done such good work with his interviews. I personally don't think he goes deep enough a lot of the time, but he's really, really, really opened the door to so many people to help people at least be open to the fact that it's not just about, yes, business strategies are essential, business tactics are essential, having the right business mentor and the right business community is absolutely essential, but it's one part of the equation. What I feel is even more important is this energetic, spiritual side on the inside. And so, again, people like Bartlett have really, I can't thank him enough for opening people's minds to become at least curious about things like mindfulness, about things like self-connection, about looking at nutrition, looking at health. Lady on talking about menopause the other day. The guy who started, I think it was not, it wasn't Pret a Manger. It was one of the well-known food businesses, retail food businesses in the UK. He was on talking about the daughter that he'd never met until she was in her mid-20s. And it was just such a wonderful conversation because you saw what an impact that had on him in terms of his capacity to run his business and how he saw the world. So yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. You ought to invite him on your show, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Get an interview with him.
yeah.
Well, yes, I mean it's all, there isn't really like, as we know, there's no separation really with anything, with all parts of our lives blend in with every other part. It's just one big blend of our thoughts and self-connection, as you say. But bringing it back to business, I think one of the key things about spirituality also is that it brings everything into perspective. So much of the business world can be that getting very overwhelmed and, being pressured by your circumstance and a situation and all that stuff. And I think spirituality enables you to see the bigger picture and to kind of step back and be able to say, you know, my decision or what I'm going to do is coming from the inner, as opposed to being controlled in a way by what's external, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is really a major thing for any, you know, whether it's spirituality, whether it's business or not. It's that ability to sort of take a step back and realize, okay, I mean, this is only a segment of my life here. You know, I'm not going to let it overpower me and pressure me into something and become a victim and all that sort of.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up again, Jade, because I've got such a wonderful example of that. I had a client fairly recently who had been, let me rewind a second. The point that you made there of realizing that it's not the world happening to us, although it looks like it is, that we're getting all this pressure from the outside, is absolutely key, because as entrepreneurs, coaches, senior leaders, we've got millions and millions of plates to spin, and hopefully not too many of them come crashing down. Or if they do, we've got people there to catch them and put them back on top. But that can become, as you say, very, very overwhelming, because it looks like the world is happening to us, because we don't see the world as it is. We see our state of mind's version of the world, moment to moment to moment to moment. So in this state of mind, when I'm kind of in the basement, my perspective is only that. And so everything looks awful, like it's closing in on me. But in this state of mind, where I'm like more connected to my true self, flow state, inner love and wisdom, whatever you want to call it, when you're in that flow state that most people can relate to, it's like, oh yeah, anything's possible. And I have the same problem, but now I'm looking at it from up here, and I realize that, oh no, actually, my state of mind has changed. The quality of my state of mind has changed. And so my perspective has changed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really important point to emphasize, because we're programmed from the earliest age to think that the world is happening to us, that it's outside in. So I've got taxes, corporate, this, that, and the other to be responsible for. I've got staff, competition, cash flow, profit, banks, mother-in-law, personal stuff, father-in-law, whatever it might be. My kids, I love them, but they're driving me insane. I'm kind of having trouble with my partner at the moment. And it all, and quite understandably, because perception is instantaneous and invisible, it looks like it's all happening to us, because that's how we've been conditioned to believe. But it's actually the other way around. And in my fortnightly presentation that I'm about to restart, I explain that in a lot of detail. And I want to share this really fabulous example, because it just ticks every single box, commercially, personally, and really from the heart as well. So I was working with this really wonderful guy. He'd been in corporate land for about 10 years, great at what he did. He was just really lovely human being, super successful, driven, ambitious. As the saying goes, the kind of guy that every woman wants to be with and every guy wants to be. He just really was a beautiful human. Decided after 10 years, do you know what? I don't want to make other people rich anymore. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to do it better. I've seen ways that I can, his entrepreneurial flair really started to kick in. It was about 3 or 4 months in, and things were starting to go well, even after just 3 or 4 months. And then a personal situation happened in his life, completely unexpected, that literally tore him apart. I got introduced to him by another mutual client, by a mutual client. And it's funny, like, you know, we all became friends, which is, I always find these things quite funny. He's a lot of my one-to-one clients eventually become friends. And I think this is about 2 months after he'd had this shock situation in his personal life. And I mean, he was in pieces. He really, really was. And to cut a long story short, what I did was showed him how to reconnect with his inner world. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the pain went away from his personal situation, but what he came to realize was that it was his perception of that situation that was creating his experience of it. And he could be in moments where he was absolutely distraught, but because of the work that we did together, he realized, I'm just experiencing feeling distraught, but I'm not the distraughtness itself. It's an experience that I'm having. And as long as I don't do anything with it, don't start creating stories, or it means this, it means that. It's like, I feel awful because this situation has happened. It's totally unexpected. It's pretty severe, but it is what it is. I'm just going to sit here and experience it. And that's what he did. And within about 6 weeks of working together, he'd picked himself back up. His business got back on track. The situation was still going on, but he now had the tools to deal with it because he realized that actually he was just having an experience. Like I said to him at the time, I was like, you are a unique expression of all that is, has been, and can ever be. And I stole that off a very, very, very controversial public figure, but it's absolutely true. We are a unique expression of all that is, has been, and can ever be, having a brief human experience. And that's it. This whole thing is a game. It's a movie. It's a play. And we're the director and the scriptwriter of it. So it's a virtual reality game. We can choose to get sucked into it and not realize that not only do we have the power, but we are the power. But the fact that we can actually, because we're such powerful creators, we can then use what's happening as fuel to create what it is we want to create. So fast forward to the end of that year, and he'd completely smashed his targets. He was still really upset about his personal situation, but he said emphatically, were it not for the work that we've done together, that he would have had to have gone back to his old employer, which for him was just the ultimate admission of failure, because his employer had said, I'll take you back any time. But for him, it was like, no. But most importantly, I said, I didn't give him the tools to deal with the situation. He already had the tools. He reconnected with his inner world, his love, wisdom, and his unique talents and abilities to then be able to navigate that situation gracefully with power and with control, but still build his business and still succeed. And he beat his target in the first year as well, despite all that. And that was a direct result of everything that you've just mentioned there, where we think the world is happening to us, but it's actually the other way around, because we are supremely powerful creator beings having a human experience.
I mean, when you're connecting back to spirit, when you're using spirit, it brings everything back into control, your side of things. And I don't mean that in like you're separate from spirit, but it's like you're back in that one universal consciousness where everything is delegated in a sense by your intention. Than it being the other way around. So, and
universal.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, please go on.
No, just bringing it back to money. Because business is about money. It's just like, yeah, we are here to create what we want. So why don't we use that vortex or that void to create massive amounts of money? I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, because money's just energy at the end of the day. Yeah,
exactly.
Money is just energy. Everything, all of existence is an exchange of energy. Yeah. So when we work together cooperatively in relationship, we help each other out energetically. We go into a restaurant and we get some food and we pay some money. It's an exchange of energy. And
money just gives you
everything is an exchange of energy. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. It's an exchange of energy. We get oxygen from the plants, we breathe out carbon dioxide to give back to the plants. And it's this beautiful, virtuous circle. And money is no different, because with money, with the world that we live in, I mean, as I've said many times that I would love it if we lived in a Star Trek future where everything's based on contribution, but we're a long, long way away from that. So for now, money is a really beautiful way of affecting change in the world, because governments aren't going to change the world. Massive corporations aren't going to change the world, because they have vested interests in keeping the status quo. And
Yeah.
we see what's going on in the world at the moment, politically, environmentally, ecologically, socially, and so on and so on. It's insane to me that some of the richest countries in the world in terms of resources are actually some of the most financially poor. But Africa is a great example of that because large corporations have unfortunately come in and taken
I mean,
advantage of that
what I mean,
situation.
it's money in itself. It's how you use the money, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
going
yeah.
back to it,
And
it's the spirituality behind that intention.
it's the love and desire and intention behind that. And the reason I bring up that example of how it can be corrupted is that equally how it can be so empowering as well, because I passionately believe that heart-led, impactful business is how we change the world and make it better. And not just keep going for profit's sake, because profit for profit's sake is an implosion, a black hole waiting to happen. But if people are connected to their hearts, to their inner wisdom, to their spirituality, to their love, money's then a really, really powerful tool to build yourself a great quality of life, but then use that money to create some incredible change in the world. I was listening to Daniel Priestley earlier this morning, one of his little reels, and he shared the story of and I just thought this was really beautiful. A guy who started a martial arts school, has become hugely successful globally, made multi-millions out of it, and he's now, excuse me, he's now using that. He's created a foundation to create martial arts schools all over the developing world so that young kids have got a focus. Young kids, because I've done a lot of martial arts in my younger years. It's just such a wonderful way to self-connect and self-discipline and self-mastery and grounding and respect for self and respect for others as well. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. That guy has gone out in the world, made a stack of money doing something that he loves, and then he's then put some of that money into helping
That's the
change the
next
world, because
person
again,
you need to get onto your show.
governments aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out who he is and get him on, because it's so true. Because money say, oh,
Beautiful
money's evil. That's
story.
nonsense. Money is just an exchange of energy.
And
It's
it's an
human
expression of your,
intention that's evil.
yeah, and money is an expression of your potential. It really is.
Yeah,
I mean, and it sometimes it's hard to say this. I mean, I've been through so much lack, but it's so true. And I like struggled a lot and I worked really hard and I still had loads of lack. And it's like, well, somewhere there's an issue, isn't it? You're working hard, but you're still in lack, and your potentials there's a resistance, there's something going on there. And whereas if you're seeing money and you're seeing abundance, that's pure expression of an unlimited potential there. And it's money's such a great measure of that.
It really, really is. As the old expression goes, it's a wonderful curtain raiser. If you're a not so good person, money will make you an awful person. But if you're a good person, money will make you a great person. Like the gentleman I mentioned earlier with his incredible foundation, and he's just one example of many people all over the world.
Exactly.
Doing really great things to uplift humanity and make the world a better place through impactful and heart-led business, which I think is just wonderful, because that is how we're going to change the world.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Look, I think on that note, I think that's a great note to end on. I think we've really you've pulled together the core essence of how you help people and teach people to bring spirituality and that essence into business. And as you know, it sounds from like what you do, it doesn't matter what business it is, but it's how you bring that forth into the world with love and wisdom. And so I encourage anyone who, whether you're an entrepreneurs who want to bring abundance and money into their business, to connect with you. because, you know, as you say, that's, or as we've said, it's a real measure of doing better in the world and bringing service to others while making money, you know.
Absolutely. And the more of us come together, the more of us that are on this vibration of, yes, we're here to make a ton of money doing what we love, but we're here to make a ton of difference and a ton of impact at the same time. The more of us come together and connect with each other like this, then the bigger exponential effect that it has in the world. Because there's a famous thing in meditation that, and it's been measured scientifically, that one person meditating creates a certain amount of frequency that goes out into the world. Two people meditating creates way more than just a 2 times effect. And again, this has been measured scientifically. And that's a whole another conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I bring that up just simply because the more of us connect, the more of us heart-led entrepreneurs and heart-led coaches and heart-led senior leaders who resonate with everything that we've shared, come together and connect as one, then the more change and vibrancy and love and fun and difference we're going to make in the world.
Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant. Well, I think we should have a part 2 because there is a lot more to say. Yeah. But thank you so much. It's been such an honor to interview you this morning for your podcast. And yeah, and let's hope it brings lots of successful, spiritually loving, money-minded people into your realm.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I always say to anyone, you know, if you have any questions about anything that Jade and I have talked about, or you're curious about any work that I do, please do get in touch. I'll be only too happy to help. You can do that through either find me on LinkedIn, Franco, just type in my name, Franco Dimori, or I'm franco.dimori on Instagram. Got some freebies, got podcast episodes, or if you just want to connect, please do so.
Thank you. Have a fantastic
Thanks, Jade. And yeah, much love. Speak to you soon.
Much love to you. Much love.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.